Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Here are the stories we're following today.
Karen, oil is on the rise as Middle East tensions escalate. Israel's military has begun moving civilians out of Rafah. It is a potential prelude to a long-expected attack on the Gaza city. We get more from Bloomberg senior reporter Henry Mayer.
What we know is that the Israeli army has been dropping leaflets to residents. In total, we're talking about 100,000 people, also sending text messages, recorded voice messages, and through media announcements, telling these people that they have to evacuate from this area, eastern part of Rafah. And obviously, this is the long expected, anticipated announcement by Israel, which could lead to an actual offensive on this city.
And Bloomberg's Henry Mayer says the move comes after ceasefire talks between Hamas and Israel in Cairo over the weekend seemed to stall. As we mentioned, oil is on the rise, and checking crude right now, West Texas Intermediate is up 1.1%, trading just shy of $79 a barrel.
Well, Nathan, while Israel moves closer to an attack on Rafah, protests continue on college campuses as commencement ceremonies begin. About 75 demonstrators waved Palestinian flags and chanted slogans at the University of Michigan ceremony. In New York, Columbia University has cleared out protesters ahead of its graduation on May 15th. Mayor Eric Adams is promising to keep things safe for the ceremony.
If the institutions decide to graduate their students and celebrate a beautiful experience with their families, we will make sure it's done in a peaceful manner.
Mayor Adams spoke on ABC's This Week, heard Sundays on Bloomberg Radio.
And Karen, members of Congress are weighing in as well. Democratic Senator John Fetterman says the protesters should be demonstrating against Hamas.
These kind of protests haven't been helpful, and ironically, they are actually working against peace.
But Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna says the demonstrators' message deserves to be heard.
They're telling us that over 30,000 people have died. It's time for this war to end. It's time for the hostages to be released that Hamas has, and they want to see leadership in America and around the world. This is not the world that they want.
Congressman Khanna and Senator Fetterman were guests on CBS's Face the Nation, which can also be heard Sundays on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, turning to markets now, Nathan, cash is king for the Oracle of Omaha. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway's cash pile increased to a record $189 billion at the end of the first quarter. Now, on the equity side, Buffett trimmed his holdings of Apple. Berkshire reported a $135 billion stake in the iPhone maker at the end of the first quarter. That's almost $40 billion less than the end of last year.
We will have Apple as our largest investment. But I don't mind at all, under current conditions, building the cash position. I think when I look at the alternative of what's available in the equity markets, and I look at the composition of what's going on in the world, we find it quite attractive.
Warren Buffett says unless something changes dramatically, Apple will remain its largest investment. Berkshire also sold its position in Paramount Global at a loss.
And this week, Karen, Wall Street is looking at lots more earnings and Fed speak. We get a preview from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
We've heard from 80% of S&P 500 companies. Stocks have reclaimed the 5,100 mark after a batch of better-than-expected earnings. Dan Suzuki is Deputy Chief Investment Officer at Richard Bernstein Advisors.
I think it's really earnings growth and fundamentals, kind of plain old boring stuff, and that's what's improving. That's what's got a lot of momentum. And importantly, it's not that it's just improving, but it's broadening out.
Disney and Uber will be in focus this week, along with Airbnb, Anheuser-Busch InBev, ARM Holdings, Occidental Petroleum, and UBS. In New York, Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Charlie, thanks. Well, next week's U.S. inflation print looms as key for the trajectory of equities and wagers on Fed interest rate cuts. This, according to Morgan Stanley strategist Mike Wilson, says the price reaction on the back of the release may be more important than the data itself.
Well, this morning, Karen, we've got plenty of C-suite news to get you caught up on. Bloomberg News has learned Credit Suisse CEO Ulrich Körner is set to leave UBS in the coming weeks after the completion of the merger. neither of the two former Swiss rivals. Kerner had been brought in as CEO in July of 2022 to try to turn the ailing firm around. The combination of the two banks' holding companies means the Credit Suisse chief executive role will become obsolete.
Well, former Starbucks chief executive Howard Schultz is urging the coffee chain to own its shortcomings and fix operations following its biggest sales miss in years. In a post on LinkedIn, Schultz wrote, quote, "At any company that misses badly, there must be contrition and renewed focus and discipline on the core." Starbucks shares plummeted after sales dropped this month for the first time since the early days of COVID in 2020.
And Karen, Twitter founder Jack Dorsey has left the board of Blue Sky. That's the social networking service that he helped fund and popularize a year ago in the wake of regret over the sale of Twitter to Elon Musk. Relations may be warming between Dorsey and Musk. Dorsey calls the company now known as X Freedom Technology.
And Nathan, that price of Morning Joe may keep going up. Robusta coffee prices have climbed to the highest level in 45 years. A supply crunch has intensified for the variety used in espresso blends and instant drinks. And it's time now for a look at some of the other stories making news in New York and around the world. And for that, we're joined by Bloomberg's Michael Barr. Michael, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. After multiple bomb threats at synagogues across Manhattan over the weekend, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer announced a new $400 million funding package he says is now available to boost security and safety at synagogues, mosques, and churches.
The second I heard about the threats, your heart sinks. You hope it's a hoax. And in this case, thank God it was. But that doesn't negativize the fear, the trauma when synagogues and other houses of worship have to be evacuated.
3 New York City synagogues and the Brooklyn Museum received bomb threats. Former President Donald Trump's criminal hush money trial resumes today in New York. Prosecutors allege Trump tried to suppress negative news coverage to influence the outcome of the 2016 election. Hope Hicks will probably return to the witness stand today for further cross-examination. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says Democrats effectively have been governing as if we were in the majority. After Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson worked with Democrats to pass a foreign aid bill, GOP Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene announced plans to remove Johnson as Speaker. Jeffries says our view would traditionally be let the other side work out its own mess. But the New York Democrat went on to say, when that mess starts to impact the ability to do the job on behalf of the American people, then the responsible thing at that moment might be for us to make clear that we will not allow the extremists to throw the Congress and the country into chaos.
It's a difficult situation on the other side of the aisle because many of my Republican colleagues are more interested in creating chaos, dysfunction, and extremism.
For what purpose?
That's a good question that has to be asked of them.
Jeffrey spoke on CBS's 60 Minutes, which can be heard Sunday nights on Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington. Interstate 95 in Norwalk, Connecticut, fully reopened to traffic in both directions after a gasoline tanker truck burst into flames during a 3-vehicle crash last week. The fire damaged an overpass bridge, causing a complete shutdown. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg. Karen.
All right, Michael Barr, thank you. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update with John Stashower. John, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. 30 years ago, the Rangers won the President's Trophy, won their first 7 playoff games, and then won the Stanley Cup. This Rangers team also best regular season record, and they have now started the playoffs 5-0. We'll see about the Cup. Long way to go for that. But game 1 at the Garden with Carolina, 2 early goals for Mika Zibanejad, and the first period still wasn't over.
Right point, Panarin works it ahead for Kreider. Into the middle, Trocheck to Zibanejad. Trocheck scores! Vincent Trocheck! It's a power play goal! And and the Rangers lead 3-1.
Sam Rosen with the call, WEPN. Rangers hung on, beat the Hurricanes 4-3. The first round ended with Dallas's 2-1 Game 7 win over Vegas. The defending Cup champs blew a 2-0 series lead. NBA first round is now over. Cleveland beat Orlando 106-94. Cavs were down 11 at the half. Donovan Mitchell, who scored 50 points in the Game 6 loss, scored 39 in the Game 7 win. Knicks and Pacers start their round 2 series tonight. MSG, Indiana won the regular season series 2-1. Both the wins were by 14 points. Sparse crowd at the stadium. Rainy day game was shortened. Yankees beat Detroit 5-2. Juan Soto, once again the big hit. 3-run go-ahead double. 7th inning. Aaron Judge homered in the first. Yanks sweep the series. Mets got swept at Tampa Bay. Rays walked it off. Bottom of the 10th, won 7-6. They stole 7 bases. They won it on a Johnny DeLuca 2-run triple after Randy Arozarena tied the game with a 9th inning 2-out homer off Edwin Diaz, his first blown save. Red Sox won 9-2 at Minnesota, ending the Twins' 12-game win streak. Giants last night lost 5-4 at Philadelphia. The Nationals beat Toronto 11-9. Dodgers beat the Braves. Shohei Ohtani had 4 hits, 2 home runs. Taylor Pendrith took the Nelson Golf in Dallas his first PGA win. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports, County Nathan.
Coast to coast on Bloomberg Radio, nationwide on Sirius XM, and around the world on Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager. We are getting ready for another busy week for earnings. It's pretty light on the economic data calendar this week, but there is a raft of Fed speakers that could keep investors busy as well. So let's get you set for this trading week ahead. We are joined now by Dennis Gardman, the chairman of the University of Akron Endowment Investment Committee and the former publisher of the Gartman Letter. Dennis, good morning. Great to speak with you. I wonder if you think investors should be pricing geopolitical risk back into the market, given the reports we're hearing about civilians getting cleared out of the southern Gaza city of Rafah, and now Russian President Vladimir Putin ordering tactical nuclear drills the day before his inauguration.
Very scary times, I'm afraid. And yes, I think you have to be pricing in geopolitical risk at a rather swift basis. There was talk over the weekend or ahead of the weekend that there would be ceasefire talks, but they seem to have broken down regarding Gaza. And now we have gold breaking out to the upside. I think you have to be long of the gold market, no question about that. And I think you have to price in geopolitical risk. So that's the major topic of the day. We'll be talking later this week about the Bank of England, but for right now, geopolitical risk is the topic du jour. No question about that.
What are you looking at in terms of a price level for gold right now? It's trading around $2,300 at the moment. There had been talk in the past about $3,000 as a potential gold level. Is that something you're looking at?
I've been very bullish of gold for quite some period of time now. I'm not a gold bug. There are times when you are to be long of gold. There are times when you are to be short of gold. There are times when you are to be neutral of gold. But this is a time you're to be bullish of gold, no question about it. And I think that one should be bullish of gold predominantly in non-U.S. dollar terms, and particularly in terms of the dollar-yen. I think we've got spot gold now going, I think, eventually to $3,000 an ounce. And I think that we've had intervention to stem the weakness of the dollar-yen. But I think that's going to prove to be fallacious. I've learned it when I traded foreign exchange back in the 1970s. The one thing I learned was that intervention to support a currency is usually fails. Intervention to weaken a currency usually works. The fact that the Bank of Japan came in 2 weeks ago to intervene against the dollar-yen at 160, I think the next time we trade through 160, we're going to 200 yen to the dollar, and maybe 225 yen to the dollar, which is where we traded dollar-yen when I first began trading yen back in the 1970s. So I think the dollar-yen, and you should be short of yen, long of dollars. You should be long of gold, short of dollars. That leaves you long of gold in yen terms. And we're now trading about 369,000 yen to the dollar. I think it's going to 600,000 yen to the dollar over the course of the next 2 or 3 years.
Now, we haven't heard any confirmation from the Japanese government that there was intervention last week, but we've seen some comparisons of Bank of Japan accounts that indicated. Are you thinking that the Bank of Japan could intervene once again?
They'll try to stop it at 160 one more time, but I think they'll give up at that point. And once we trade 160.10, and go through the 160 level, that frees you up to go to dramatically new lower levels for the yen, new higher levels for the dollar. So I think they'll be intervening one more time to prove that they're there. But as I said, if I've learned anything in 50 years of trading, it's that intervention to support a currency usually fails. Intervention to weaken a currency almost always succeeds. They'll try once more to stem the yen's weakness, but they will fail very badly at that attempt. No question about it.
Our last minute or so, Dennis, is the chairman of a university endowment. I wonder what you make of these growing campus protests and calls for universities to divest from Israel, given what's going on in Gaza. What are your comments on that?
As long as I remain the chairman of the University of Akron's endowment, we will avoid doing anything that protesters demand of us. And I think that we should pay attention to what Ben Sasse, the president of the University of Florida, said. Adults are back in the room, and we need to prove that we are stronger than the protesters. So free speech is important, but free speech that goes across the line should be avoided at all costs. And like I said, as long as I remain the chairman of the University of Akron's endowment, I will argue against disinvestment. No question about that.
And just quickly, is it possible to divest from Israeli interests in terms of a university endowment?
I think it's nigh upon impossible. The far reaches of international capitalism make it difficult to divest. I think it's an ill-advised and naive expectation on the part of the protesters. It just won't happen.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Today, your morning brief on the stories making news from Wall Street to Washington and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed at 6 a.m. Eastern each morning on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning starting at 5 a.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg 1130 in New York, Bloomberg 99.1 in Washington, Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, and Bloomberg 960 in San Francisco.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Plus, listen coast to coast on the Bloomberg Business app, SiriusXM, the iHeartRadio app, and on Bloomberg.com. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day right here on Bloomberg Daybreak.